tell me where in the world is
crime in San Diego?
Welcome back to another episode of Where in the World is Crime in San Diego?
Episode 2. Well, technically first full episode.
Yes, this is our first full episode, incorporating that we have announced that we also have a video format for our podcast. So if you are a listener for our podcast, but also like to be a visual listener, well, ta-da, we're here now.
Which I'm just going to point out the elephant in the room. I tried to order a new neon sign. That's what this is, WWCSD. And I didn't check the measurements, so it was just like a bad buy. So we're still working on getting full decorations, but it wasn't tempting.
Oh, but also too, that thing is bright as you can be. So
yeah.
It's too bright to put on camera. Anyways, I hope you guys had a chance to listen to our last episode, V is for Victory.
Yes.
Heartbreaking story, and not every story that we do cover has a good finish, but it's also every story is important for us to share and just for you guys to realize that these victims, these people that have these unfortunate endings do have a backstory.
I am glad that cold case got solved, though. It's always a good thing when there is closure, even if it's not what you wanted to hear.
Oh, exactly. So. Definitely, for sure. But now it's a new week. Easter has come and passed, and I hope you and your family had a nice Easter.
Thank you guys for all the birthday wishes. I felt all the love in all directions on our Facebook, on our Instagram, our DMs. I loved every single message we got. If I didn't personally say thank you, because I'm still working on going through some of those, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and you had your birthday week. So in the past, you had your birthday month, and this year I'm like, hey, listen, we have our wedding to plan. I was like, let's tone it down just a little tiny bit.
But if anybody still wants to take me out to dinners, I am available. Call me.
So we have our new week, a new episode. This week is something that I knew about growing up. I knew this person through TV because I would always watch the news. And this person was always around with the Charger games and always on the TV broadcasting on CBS 8.
Yeah, so I had no idea who this name was or any reaction when you first brought this up to me.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So who are we going to talk about today? Well, let's start off with the episode name. This week's episode is called KK's Heroes.
Okay, so our disclaimers for this week are gun violence and attempted murder. Our sources are San Diego Union Tribune, CBS 8, Fox News, KTLA, TheGuardian.com, Dave and Jeff Show podcast, Facebook, the Kyle Kraska page, Scripps Health, YouTube, and RedCrossBlood.org.
So, Kyle Kraska. Kyle Kraska is a Boston native who went to school in Syracuse, New York. And in Syracuse, he wanted to become a sportscaster, newscaster person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he's very well known now through San Diego because he's been here for a very long time. But his back history was that in 1988, his first job was in Watertown, New York. And then from there, he spent time in Florida, Tampa, Saratoga.
It's like a small town, right?
Yeah, these are like small towns, nothing too big, not like your major markets. But then he just transferred to those cities, then El Paso, and then he ended up being stationed here in Los Angeles, where he was on the CBS morning show for about a couple years. Mm-hmm. So this is 1995 to 1998 is where he was in Los Angeles. While being in Los Angeles, he also was the host of Hard Copy. Hard Copy was a really good, popular kind of like just more detailed like crime or just stories that you wouldn't see on your local news. They were more like national headlines because it was a broadcast through the nation.
Oh, okay. I kept seeing Hard Copy come up. I had no idea what that was.
Inside Edition. Inside Edition is another well-known one. So it was like a competitor to hard copy.
Okay.
Okay. Jump to 1999, and that's where he comes down to CBS 8 San Diego. Now, I couldn't really find where he was or what was his position from 1999 to 2003, but from 2003 on, he became a sports anchor in the afternoon.
So like evening news.
Yeah, afternoon, evening, your late night news, like the 5, 6:30, 11 o'clock news, the prime time hours. Those are the hours that you get seen the most. While he was in those positions, he oversaw all the on-air digital, clips that required sports. So you're talking about baseball, soccer, football, golf, hockey, basketball, everything and anything. But the one thing that I remember as a child growing up is he would do the post games for the Charger games, and him and his co-anchor John Howard were always like buddy, and I always like think to myself, oh man, these guys are awesome. Like they get to talk about sports all damn day. Like,
if you guys remember any of these names or people or recognize, please let me know.
Yeah.
If I don't know if I'm alone on this, but none of this rings a bell.
For me, I would always see these people on the TV, and especially during like preseason football and during football season, I would always watch CBS, like post game. I think
I was more of an ABC girl. Mm-hmm. That might have been it.
I see how it is. So why are we talking about Kyle Kraska? Well, something happened on February 10th, 2015.
So we're going to start with a little bit of the background. So October of 2014, Kyle needed some work done on his home. And he actually found a business card conveniently on his door for a painter. So he calls the number on the business card and he hires Superior Painting to do the outdoor of his home. And he lives in Scripps Ranch, so like a pretty good neighborhood.
Yeah.
Pretty affluent, safe.
Pretty upscale neighborhood.
Which I'm surprised that, I don't know, like door to door. But I mean, I guess back then that was a good way to get business.
And it still is even now too. Honestly, it's like word of mouth. Like you can go to your front doorstep and there'll be like little like business cards dropped off of like, need painting, need like your like string lights for your Christmas lights, or even like just
personally, I
gardening.
ignore all those.
I see them all the time.
I ask for recommendations if we need something, but I don't really pay attention to like business cards on our door. And this is probably why. But anyways, he calls a business card, he sets up a deal, and he's going to pay $3,000. Like this is a deal he's offered for the entire exterior of the home. As a deposit, which most workers will ask for, he did $800 up front and $2,200 at the completion of the job. So it's like a good faith deposit just to like get you started.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the very first day of work, the guy shows up late. And he's just kind of like a mess. And it's like, okay, day one, not great.
Not a good sign.
The first week, he's showing up at odd hours. He's showing up late. He's only there for a couple hours. He's coming and going. Like, not the best look, but you're kind of like, trying to give him a chance.
Exactly. Okay.
So as it goes on, like, that pattern just doesn't get any better. And eventually, the guy just says, I'm too broke to come to work. So you need to give me more money or I'm not doing it. And he's like, well, no, a deal's a deal. Like, we agreed to this much. Like, I'm not forking out more money. And eventually the guy just says, sorry, I can't work anymore. And Kyle assumes that like, that's the end of it. Like, yeah, the job was left unfinished. It was like less than halfway done. But I mean, like, that's the last of it. Like, he's never going to come back again. Because what's the point? I mean, he left me high and dry, basically.
Yeah. You pay for your materials and you pay for the service and it doesn't get done. Like, I mean, you can't go back and say, hey, like, I need to charge you more.
Or let's try again. Yeah. Which he was trying to charge him more. And he's like, no, that's not how this works. Like, we agreed on a deal. That's what I'm agreeing to pay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So a couple months go by and nothing, like the job never got done, obviously. But he didn't really think he'd ever see him again, which why would you? And then it's 6:30 in the morning on the first week of February of 2015, and he hears like a loud pounding on the door. Like people joke around, but knock like if it's the cops. And I think that's what I imagine when he says it. It was just like loud and like unusual is what he used.
Well, yeah. I mean, at 6 a.m, like those are so odd hours that I would be freaking out if someone knocked so hard like that at my front door.
Well, what's even weirder is when he goes to open the front door because he was sleeping. So that woke him. He works late. And when he woke up and he goes to the front door, he looks on his doormat and there's a note. The note says, "It's in your best interest to pay me the money you owe me."
That's threatening right there. Honestly, hearing that right there is threatening. Like, it's scary. Like, if I saw that as like as your best interest to pay me, like, yeah, I would take that as a full threat.
Yeah, but also keep in mind, it's been a couple months since he's last seen or heard from this guy. So, I mean, it's not the first thing that comes to your mind. Like,
but it's
maybe that's the only person he owed or like quote unquote owed.
But you also got to take into consideration that this Kyle Kraska is a public figure. And in 2015 or 14, he's already been on the television airways for over 12 years. So maybe he might have created enemies along the way.
Which was definitely a concern.
Yeah, because at that moment, it could have been anyone. It was like, oh yeah, this is very scary.
Well, yeah, it wasn't signed and it didn't say an amount. And it wasn't exactly like first thing where he's like, I know exactly who this is from. It was just like an anonymous note at that point.
Okay.
Ominous? Yeah, ominous.
Anonymous?
No, ominous. Like,
oh, ominous. Oh,
yeah. Like, wait, but anonymous too.
Yeah.
So a week later, on February 10th, 2015, Kyle is rushing out the door for another day at work. He usually leaves work or home around 3 p.m. to start the 5 p.m. news. Which I imagine like a little bit of prep time and like going over stuff.
Going through traffic and just catching up. Yeah.
So it's like exactly before 3. And he gets in his car. He's doing like the whole rushing thing that everybody does every single day. And as he's backing out of the car, like the last thing you expect is for somebody to pull up behind you, tires screeching, and block you in your own driveway. Like you almost think like, what in the world?
Yeah, literally. Yes.
Because I can't curse. But yes. So he like barely has a minute to adjust to figure out what's going on. And he just hears someone say, "You should have paid me the $2,200 you owed me." And next thing you know, there are bullets flying everywhere. He starts coming, his contractor at this point, because he recognizes him, starts coming up the driveway. He starts shooting at his tires. He starts walking around the car, shoots at the hood and hits the engine. He keeps walking around the car and hitting more tires, hitting the back window. Like he's just shooting up the car from every angle. Kyle is obviously in a moment of like shock and he's trying to figure out what to do. And he kind of takes a minute to think like, okay, like, can I get away? Like, can I get out of the car and run away? Or do I stay in the car and like not play dead, but like, is he going to run out of bullets and leave? And like, do I just wait it out? And at this point he has been hit. And he's trying to like process everything. He jets out of the car and he slides next to it thinking, okay, he's shooting on the other side. Like he's bound to run out of bullets at some point.
Yeah.
And the contractor is still shooting away. He runs out of bullets. He reloads, which gives Kyle a very small window to figure out what to do. And he's like, okay, I either make a run for it, but if he has more bullets, he's going to shoot me as I'm running away. So he decides, okay, let me get back in the car, get my cell phone, and I'll call 911. So as he's getting back in the car, he gets hit again. And shots continue around the car and eventually hit him as well. It was a total of 20 bullets. And 6 of those hit Kyle. Keep in mind, it's close proximity. It's not far away if you're walking around the car and someone's sitting in it. And Kyle looks down and blood's coming out and it's just... No, like he's fully conscious of what's happening, but at the same time, he's still taking a minute to like process.
Well, yeah, I think at any moment when something like that is happening, like there's all this like chaos that it feels like it's like an eternity that it's happening, but it's happening so fast, like in a matter of seconds, it's over.
Oh yeah, he says I think it was a total of like literally less than 5 minutes, but it felt eternal.
Yeah.
So eventually the bullet stopped and he hears the van drive away. So he knows he's in the clear. He looks at his cell phone and it's shattered. And his thought is like, oh no, my cell phone. Which it's kind of silly, but I mean, your brain's just trying to ration like, okay, dead end, what's next?
Yeah.
So he's bleeding out and he's realizing that his only shot, because he lives in a cul-de-sac, is to make it out to the main intersection so that he has hope of somebody coming down the street and seeing him. And he actually makes it to the corner, like crawling and just trying and huffing and puffing. And when he makes it, luck would have it that the car that pulls over is not only a friend of his, but an ex-off-duty cop. So the reason he's lucky is because if they call 911, 911 won't come into the scene until they can secure that there's nobody else that's going to be in danger. Like if they can't clear that the shooter's gone and that like there's no other risks, they won't go in until they do. So ambulance wouldn't have been able to get to him. EMTs wouldn't have been able to help him. And like he would have bled out and died. But because it was an off-duty cop and he was able to say, hey, the area's clear, like help can come in, everybody's safe, they got to him faster than they would have if that hadn't happened.
Like if a neighbor would have called 911 and said, hey, this person's been shot. Well, where's the shooter? I don't know where the shooter is. That right there would have been like, we can't send.
That would have added another 10, 15 minutes of search
before
they can actually help him.
Wow. I had no idea that was
how it worked.
Or like a protocol or anything like that. But I think it was extremely helpful for the off-duty police officer to have called 911 and say the area is secured.
Well, they actually worked out together at the same gym in the neighborhood or like near the neighborhood. So he's like, I mean, you always tell me like it's about who you know.
It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
So it really does hold true words.
Yeah.
To, network people. If you're shy and you don't like talking to people, maybe that person that you do know.
Maybe that'll give you a little push to socialize a little bit more.
Okay. So help arrives.
Right.
All right. And then what's next?
So he gets sent to the hospital. He's, obviously injured, but they're trying their best to get him okay. He's fully conscious the entire time. Like surprisingly, with the amount of injuries and like blood he lost, like he didn't black out at any point, which you hear a lot from people with like blood loss or pain or both combined. So he gets to the hospital and they're still trying to like identify him and like figure out like security measures because he is considered like a public figure. They still have to keep like HIPAA laws and like privacy. So they were trying to figure out who to notify. And this is kind of weird, but his nephew actually worked in New York for a social media company. And when people started tweeting like that there was a shooting in San Diego and it was a sportscaster before his name even came out.
Oh, like hashtags.
Yeah.
Like the hashtag, like say Kyle Kraska, CBS anchor.
What wasn't even his name? It was just San Diego Sportscaster.
Oh, okay.
So he starts realizing that there's a San Diego Sportscaster that has been shot. And as he starts digging into it and more starts coming out over like the next 30 minutes because news moves pretty fast, he realized that it's his uncle, the one that was hurt. So he calls his mom and says like, hey, I need to tell you something. Your brother's been shot. And at this point, he was still in critical condition. So like it was unknown. So his sister contacted the hospital, had to go through like the identification process. And minutes before he went into surgery, he gave the approval for her to get information. Like if it had been, 5 minutes later, he would have already been in surgery and he would have never been able to like authorize for his family to get info about him.
That's wild.
So he says like a lot of things lined up for him really, really well. And he got really lucky at like almost every turn in this.
That's incredible. Like, honestly, like just luck of the draw, I guess you can kind of say that. Oh my gosh, like have your sister basically make decisions on your behalf.
Or just get information on like if you're okay or if you're out of surgery or like if they need anything. And right before surgery or like during the process of the intake, he actually flatlined twice. So he was coded as dead and then revived back with like the, what do they call them?
like the
electroshock or
like whatever it's called.
Like those little thingies.
Brain fart. Yes.
I'm having like the Grey's Anatomy play in my head right now.
And that's just so wild to think, that.
But not once, but twice.
Yeah. So then, okay, so he's in surgery, and then
So he needs multiple blood transfusions in order to be able to get through this and heal correctly. He ends up going into a 1-week coma. So he was shot on February 10th, which was a Tuesday morning, and that's the last recollection he has. When he first wakes up, his girlfriend at the time hands him a Valentine's Day card.
Okay. Yeah, because it's 4 days late. Yeah,
So he's thinking, like, why don't you just wait till Valentine's Day to give me this? Like,
Yeah.
there's no need. Like, he's still on the same day, and he's like, okay, if I've been out for 2 days, it's the 12th. You can wait 2 more days to give me. And that's when his mom tells him, like, nope, Valentine's Day was last Saturday, like, or past that. And he says he has like almost like, I don't know, just like a moment where he like doesn't realize.
Like, it's wild to think that, oh my gosh, like it's not like the 11th, it's like 10 day or like 7 days after. So you're looking at what, February 17th or 18th probably at that time. So like, I would feel like, oh crap, like I would feel like my chest is just like super pumping. Like, I'm like, how can it be? Like,
the closest feeling I can relate is when you take a nap and you wake up and think like you're on the next day already and like you missed an entire day through sleeping.
Yes, exactly.
And then you're like, oh, like what? Like you go into panic mode.
And then you realize, oh no, it's just only been like a 2-hour nap.
Yeah. But you go to like during daylight savings, it happens a lot where you take a nap when it's bright, you wake up and it's dark and you're like, what day is it? What year is it? Like,
yes.
Where are we?
Yeah, no, exactly. I totally get that. And it's just wild to think because it's like, I mean, you go into a coma and it's like so much time passes by. It's just wild. Like, how does that even happen? Like, how can you like accept that?
Yeah.
A week had just
Well, it turns out that his injuries were 2 shots to the chest, 1 to the bicep, 1 to the leg, 1 to a lung, and 1 to a liver.
Ooh, the liver one is a killer.
I mean, all of them are pretty bad.
No, but like, it's just like there's so much blood that goes to your liver that, you know, a shot to the liver is almost 100% fatal. That's just like wild.
Yeah, he got really lucky at all ends.
Jeez.
Turns out they were able to identify this said contractor, and his name was Mike Montana. He was 54 years old, and he identified as the owner of Superior Painting. Which, oddly enough, he used the van or his work van to go commit this crime. So even though people just had a description of a tall white man, middle-aged, the van was the one thing that made it easy to like track down and like follow the footsteps and find out who the perpetrator was.
Well, I mean, I'm also assuming that, I mean, hopefully like someone in the neighborhood was able to like even identify like, oh yeah, there was a white van as soon as the shooting happened, like, you know?
Right, but I mean, like, the description wasn't very, like, narrow. It was a tall white man in his middle age. Like, again, you can start anywhere. But the fact that he had a van with his business name on the side and huge lettering across the panel, like, made it very easy to, like, where do we start? Where do we finish? How does he know him? Yes.
Yes. And now it's just like, that's where it gets like dumb criminal status. That is like what in the world status right there. For
That's
sure.
what I was like, really? We didn't think that one through. So it turns out that he left the scene of the crime. He got rid of the gun. Then he went home to his house in El Cajon, which, I mean, again, out of all places to run to. And he was home for a while. He engaged in a hours-long standoff with a SWAT team and crisis negotiators before finally turning himself in at, I think it was like shortly after 10 p.m.
Okay.
So think about it. They got the call around 3. They figured it out around like 4 or 5. And then like the next 5 hours were spent with them. They ended up shutting down the entire neighborhood. People couldn't go home because they knew he was armed and dangerous and didn't know to the extent that he would go to avoid them. So they tried to clear out the entire neighborhood to protect people. Like, can you imagine?
I mean, it's being a neighbor or just being on that street and being one of his neighbors. It would be so inconvenient and so terrifying to know that my neighbor committed a crime where he potentially killed someone. Is very frightening and scary, all in like wrapped up in one emotion.
Well, during the interrogation, cops told him, like, just so you know, there's a high chance that Kyle isn't going to make it. Like, you know, we're waiting for that call where you're going to go from attempted murder to murder in like 10 seconds. And he said, good, he deserves it. So it's not even like there was remorse there or any sort of like, oh, what did I do? Or I didn't mean to. Like, no.
It was an accident. No, like this was premeditated murder. It's like, I mean, come on, dude. Like, honestly, you're talking about $3,000. $3,000 to lock yourself up in jail for the rest of your life? Are you going to really want to do that? Like, come on.
Yeah, no. He didn't think this out. So this case went to trial in July of 2016. Because obviously we know our legal system takes forever. Mm-hmm. And he was found guilty. But before he was found guilty, his defense team had a chance to try to explain it. I really think he got ripped off on his defense team. Because the best they could come up with is that he had back injuries from like 2011. And he had 2 surgeries back to back and like never fully recovered and was on really strong medication for like years. Mm-hmm. So at this point, 5 years since the accident. And that he was so intoxicated from the medication that he wasn't processing what he was doing. And then they go on to say, oh, he wasn't trying to kill Kyle. He was shooting at the car and Kyle jumped in the middle of the crossfire.
But he was in his car backing the car out of the driveway. Like, how?
And then he says, if I really wanted to kill him, I would have shot him point blank. But instead, it was just the bullets that missed the car and hit Kyle.
Oh.
I know these people go to law school.
Was this a hired attorney or was it a public defender?
That I didn't look into.
Okay.
I want to say a public defender because it doesn't seem like he had the money for an attorney.
No, I want to say it was a public defender because that sounds.
But either way, if that's your best shot, I'm worried.
That's just mind-boggling to say that, hey, like I was just trying to aim for the car, but I admit he got in the way. Like, no, I don't believe it.
Well, what's interesting about this case is even though this case was about his attempt on Kyle, they were also able to tack on 2 previous charges from criminal threats. So the first one was from 2012. So Mike Montana owned a jet ski at some point.
Okay.
And he used to like to go out to the bay and ride his jet ski. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. No.
But the San Diego rowing club, ended up asking him to not ride the jet ski while they're in the middle of their annual regatta in Mission Bay. So like whenever there's a lot of people in the water, like just don't come out at that point because again, people are floating in the water. And then if you're coming by with jet ski, it's a high chance of someone getting hurt.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So they just asked nicely, like that day's off limits. And he did not like being told when he could or couldn't ride his jet ski. So he decided to continue leaving threatening voicemails to the manager of the San Diego Rowing Club. Like just saying like, you know, I can do what I want. I'm going to hurt you guys. Like you can't stop me. So eventually the threats got pretty high where they were able to press criminal charges. Mm-hmm. The next event kind of hit a little home for me. He visited a DMV in 2014, the Poway office, which for those of you that don't know, I used to work at the DMV and I've had plenty of these encounters.
Oh my God.
So it definitely like brought me back to some of my horror stories where I'm like, oh, my PTSD is coming out. But basically he got angry at the employee because she wouldn't waive certain fees. And he was really insistent that he wanted those fees waived. And listen, sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. But if you're being a jerk to someone, there's less of a chance of them wanting to help you. Just like an overall rule anywhere you go. So he's like, okay, fine. If you're not going to help me, I'm going to go to the window next door. So he goes to the window next door and the employee's like, sorry, that's not how this works. Which I'm going to be honest, that's not how that works. Mm-hmm. If you've never been in the DMV, don't try that. So they start telling him like, I'm sorry, you have to leave. Like it becomes an escalated situation. So he starts yelling back and says like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to do what I want. In fact, I'm going to go home and get my machine gun and come back and blow everybody up. Which is like the worst thing you can do in a state building.
Yeah.
So obviously they did document this because it came back out once his name came back and he got charged. And the judge actually added this onto the case, which is like not very common.
Is that even possible? I never knew that was possible.
Because they're criminal threats. So threatening someone on a state building is punishable and like up to a certain amount of years.
Wow.
So I think at the time they didn't prosecute it by itself, but once it's tacked on to like actually harming and executing something, you can tack it on basically.
I have no idea that can happen. So you can, like, when you're on federal buildings, like
Federal or state.
if I were to tell you is like, I'm going to kill you.
Oh yeah, they take it much more serious.
That's a serious threat, and that can be criminally charged against.
Especially because the state employee is considered like property of the state because you're paid by the state and you're on state property. So that's much more serious than if you were to yell at someone in the middle of a parking lot.
So note to self and everyone else, do not do any criminal threats to anyone on state or federal properties.
Yes. Just as a rule of thumb, just don't do it, period.
Just don't do it, period.
Yeah.
Just don't do it in general. Okay. So Kyle survived, right? Thankfully. Okay. So then what happened next?
He actually did something really amazing, and we don't hear this often. I mean, I do hear people attempting to, but because his platform is so much bigger, I think this was a little easier to come together, and the community was so invested in his safety, where he was able to start an annual blood drive. In 2013, he actually hosted his 5th annual blood drive for this. So it's called KK's Heroes in celebration of life, Kyle Kraska's Heroes. And he is so thankful to first responders for everything they do, to anybody that donates for blood. I did not know that one blood donation can save up to 3 lives.
That's wild. That's crazy.
That's pretty amazing.
I know one of my good friends from back in the day. She's a huge advocate of donating blood, where I think she's literally one of the top blood donators in the county because
way.
She's donated so much blood. Like, she literally goes like every time she can. And I would see her Instagram posts, and it's just like, here, like, she has the whole, like, the blood, like the heart in the hand and the needle and
like the squeezing.
Yes. And she's like, here I am again doing my part or whatever it is. And it's just like,
some people do it like weekly or monthly, depending on how like connected they are to it. Blood donations save accident and burn victims, patients with organ transplants, cancer treatments, people with sickle cell disease. And that's just a few. Like, there are so many more people that are helped from this.
Well, yeah, and considering too that Kyle got shot 6 times, like, the average body has about like 6-7 pints of blood. I mean, you said that he had multiple transfusions, so he had to have gone through multiple units of blood to even just help save his life. That's
literally what he says saved him, is the amount of transfusions he went through, and like the fact that there was transfusions available for him to use. So he countlessly shares how the only reason he's alive today is because of the kindness of San Diegans that had donated blood prior to, and that was available for him. And he's a huge advocate for that.
That's great. That's awesome.
So I think it's so cool that this was his 5th annual. I would want to go out next year and support, or like even go donate blood, like just start going every now and then.
So in 2023, which like he had his last one,
so this February. So he does it every year. Either Valentine's Day weekend or like somewhere in those dates between the 4th and or the 10th and the 14th. Sorry. He has done it so far. And the doctors that did surgery on him go out there to support, the nurses, the EMTs, like the whole team kind of does it as like a reunion to get together and celebrate, one, that they're still alive and the amount of people they're able to help keep alive, and with the goal of keeping and saving more people in the future. So that's really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, like looking back on that too, like he did this blood drive more as a thank you to like what he calls the heroes.
Yeah,
which
first
is
responders.
First responders. It's not just the first responders that helped him, but also just first responders in everybody's community.
Oh yeah, like he mentions, like you have to have a special kind of like heart and personality and strength to do that kind of job.
Yeah, I can't handle that.
I can honestly say I would not be able to do that job.
Yeah, it's very difficult to even see or even fathom some of the stuff that they go through every single day.
Yeah. Well, the cool part is that in total, since they started, so over the last 5 years, they have been able to collect 1,735 blood donations. That's a lot of donations.
Yeah, all in just like one little day. Right? That's huge. And if you're saying that one person donating blood is
Can
good
save
for,
up to 3 lives.
yeah, so you're looking at over like close to 4,000, more than 4,000 lives that you can potentially save.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
awesome.
not good at math. I think we've covered this. I am my math doesn't math out. So, but I think that's really amazing. I love that he was able to take his platform, and he's very big on saying like, this blood drive is not about me. I'm just helping like crusade this, but like this is about everybody else that shows up and does the work and doesn't get recognition, and about helping others that are going to need it at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Like,
So he seems very humble and very grateful to like be alive.
yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's amazing story. Like, and looking onto the story a little more deeper too, I was able to discover that he testified in court against Mike.
Oh yeah.
The day that he testified, he was saying that it had been postponed multiple times beforehand in 2016. Now, in 2016, what happened was we had the All-Star game here in San Diego, and the All-Star game is usually like right after 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
And the day that he had to go testify was the day of the All-Star game.
Oh shoot.
So it was like July 16th, 2016 or something like that. And it just happened to be, or July 12th, sorry. And it just happened to be that he had to go testify in San Diego. So when he went to go to the game right after, like he wasn't kind of like in the moment because of what he had to just go through.
Yeah.
So it was like a little kind of like difficult for him to be in the moment where like he was in the courtroom, then go to the game and try to enjoy the game, but he didn't because he had to go relive that experience.
Yeah, and then you had to like push through and like try to put on a game face for work.
Yeah. But thankfully, the court came through and he was in the courtroom when he heard the verdict. And what was the verdict?
So he was found guilty, and he was sentenced in August of 2016 to life in prison without parole.
Yeah. Premeditation murder will get you life.
Which, I mean, I think we've just been able to prove that like he had an anger streak and he was a danger to society. And I feel like if it wasn't Kyle, it could have been like a mass shooting. Like he seemed like he had the anger in him.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And like, it's just wild to think because,
From what I read, like in January of 2014, he filed himself as the sole owner of Superior Painting and filed for bankruptcy. But when they followed up on the van, the company wasn't in bankruptcy and it wasn't registered to him. It was registered to Ron Pendley. And he had no idea where the van came from. He didn't own it. He had never met Mike Montana. So I don't know if he like added like an ink to it or like a different name, or if he saw the company and just like mimicked it and tried to like get business under that. But in 2013, Mike Montana's business license had been canceled for failure to pay taxes. So he was going through financial struggles. But at that point, he wasn't the owner of Superior Painting San Diego, at least what they recognize as a registered business.
Mm-hmm.
If he had a business that he hadn't registered, then that might have been a different story. Which again, because it was undocumented, there wasn't much on it. Like that wasn't the biggest thing they were worried about.
Oh.
But it just kind of caught my eye as like, that shows you that he's shady.
Oh, yeah, like fraud. Definitely
Yeah.
fraudulent stuff. Definitely for sure.
But I mean, we don't have to worry about that. He's doing life in prison. He's now 50. I don't know.
No, he's it's like,
Oh no, 60.
he's like in his 60s now.
Yeah,
'cause
he's in
like-
his 60s. He's
yeah.
not going anywhere.
Yeah, and as for Kyle, so from 1999 to 2001 or 2021, Kyle was here in CBS 8 San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And in September 7th of 21, he moved up to LA. Thanks. Why would you want to go to LA anyways?
You're
But
clearly not hurt.
no,
Okay.
and that's why I wear the San Diego. I love San Diego. So yeah, he went to LA Fox affiliated station up there where he is doing his same role where he's like sports director, sports anchor. He covers the Los Angeles Rams post game, pre game, news coverage.
Do you think he did it to follow the Chargers?
No, because he's following the Rams. And good for him.
Oh.
Boo the Chargers. But when he was here in San Diego and then also in LA, he actually ended up winning some awards. Like he was 6-time Emmy Award winner, 3-time Gold Mike Award winner. So he had like prestigious awards for, being so good at his job. And I mean, he's so successful still, and he still looks at this every single year. He does videos of
he hasn't left this like in the background. Like he's very appreciative, and he will constantly talk about and advocate for first responders, blood drives, blood donations, how important it is. And what I find interesting is that he's very private about like even bringing Mike's name up. He's like, hey, like some people have brought up the theory, like, is it a deranged listener who like, or like a viewer who like just had anger towards you and like didn't like something you said and wanted to attack you.
Yeah.
And the reason that was such a big theory is because a couple months before, in December of 2014, I'm trying to think, 2014, there was a meteorologist in Texas who was leaving his work, the station that he worked at, when he was shot 3 times before getting into his car. And the gunman was never found. So obviously if that happened a couple months before and then Kyle comes out as like shot in his driveway, leaving to work, like it seemed to almost feel like there was like a trend setting. So that was obviously a very first theory that came to mind for public and investigators. And they were able to mark right away that like this was a targeted attempt and it was not connected to anything else. But he was big to say like, look, I don't like talking about him or like what happened. I can just say there was a disagreement and like it didn't go well. He doesn't like sit there and badmouth him. He doesn't, he does say like it hurt me and it changed my life, but it also made me a stronger person. I'm more appreciative for what I went through. I'm appreciative of my life and like of other people's jobs and what they do for me. So he really is focused on the positive versus taking in that hatred and that negative and like letting it cripple the rest of his life. And I think I can really admire that because not everybody can or does that.
No, because there's so many people out there that they go through this such traumatic experience and they don't come out of it with a positive attitude, and they struggle to get past it.
He does give a lot of credit to like the community, from like people writing on his Facebook, people writing him letters, people calling into the station to like say get well soon, posts on social media. He says that all of that gave him hope, that like realizing that he had so much support from like even strangers.
Yeah, oh, definitely for sure. I mean, all these like news coverages, like stations from around the country and probably around the world, probably send their condolences and prayers and get
well. That's what made it interesting is everybody that was reporting on this was thinking like this could have been me.
Yeah.
Especially if you're thinking like, oh, it's an upset viewer. Like that's part of being in the public eye, is that you're not going to make everybody happy. And you're kind of putting a target on yourself without meaning to. Yeah. So I think for the beginning, it was very scary for everybody in the media world to be like, how far is someone willing to go?
It's scary. It's really scary to think, but
it has a positive ending, and I think that's awesome. And that's why I wanted to do something on the lighter side.
Definitely. So let us know what you guys think. Does putting yourself out in the media, like a public figure, does that make you a bigger target? I would say yes. I feel like it does make you, it also helps, it makes you more accountable, where like you are a public figure, so you have to be able to be such a positive influence where like, you do something wrong, like say you get arrested for your DUI, then you get what's the word now? You get canceled, right? That's
canceled culture.
Cancel culture, right? So that's part of the persona that you.
But it does also give you a platform or an opportunity to do something like this, where you turn that and you do such a positive impact in the community. But yes, you can't just recklessly say whatever's on your mind and like not be held accountable to it.
Yeah.
So there is a pressure, but I don't know if it makes you a target.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that many people are invested to where like I would drive to somebody's house and find out where they live to tell them peace of my mind because I didn't like what news they reported. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. But let us know what you guys think, because we would love to hear what you guys
let us know.
So now we've reached the end of our episode, and we have our SBS of the week.
Small Business Spotlight.
So
I don't know how to address this.
So we went to go check out this small business for this week. I took Angie. And unfortunately, I will not be featuring this SBS. I will not say who they are or where they are from, but let's just leave it at that. Okay.
It's funny because normally every SBS we do, we end up loving something about them, if not everything about them. And I guess I wasn't ready to have a disappointment yet. Like we were on such a good streak.
No.
Not every pick is a winner. And without saying names, I can just say it was a very negative experience. It left a very sour taste in my mouth. Literally and figuratively. Yeah, it was bad. It was just all bad.
No, we'll just leave it at that, okay? Because we're not here to badmouth any business or anything like that. But
you don't want to talk about the experience? We're not saying names.
We're not saying names, but the experience itself was terrible, and I'm just gonna leave it at that.
I'm willing to share why it was terrible. That way they can see like where we're judging from.
Okay.
So we did go in knowing that they were about to close and that like we were kind of cutting it close. But I think there was still like an hour left before closing. So we walk in and the first thing we're greeted with is like a slur sentence that I didn't even understand half of it. And I just heard like, is that okay? And I'm like, yes, but it was a questionable yes. Like I didn't quite get the full sentence. So later, like a couple seconds later, we're sitting down and we're looking at the menu and then a lady walks in and they give her the exact same sentence, but I was able to like catch it at that point. And it was, oh, we close at 1:30, you know, and the lady's like, okay, does that mean like I can order up until 1:30? And then like, and they're like, no, you have to be out of here by 1:35, which I've never heard a business like give you a time to like be out of there. And I was like, okay. And they would just like, the business was empty, like not a soul except for us and that one lady and the two people working in the back. And she takes our order and then she comes back, drops off the plates and leaves. There's no like, is there anything else? Like there was no option for like, does this look good? The food was reheated from probably that morning. Like it was rubbery. It was not good. It just, no. I was super upset because that's just like the worst thing for me. And then she walks, I guess it's like the waitress walks by. She's on her cell phone talking really loud, which to me is very unprofessional. We asked for our bill because we're already like completely disappointed. We just want to get out of there. She drops off the bill and then she goes to the back of the kitchen, which like it's out of view, but in earshot. And she's like, do you guys want a box? And it almost felt like you're like at your aunt's house and you're like packing up to go. Like, it's not the at-home feeling I like or wanted. And I was like, oh my God, like we could totally dine and dash. And like, she wouldn't even notice if we're here or not. But I have a bigger conscience than that. And I'm like, oh, let's not do that. Like, fine. But I was like, we're not leaving a tip. Like, and I hate doing that, but I just don't reward bad service.
Yeah, it was terrible.
It was terrible. She had a bad attitude the whole time. Like, she seemed bothered that we even sat down. It was just all bad.
It was bad. I was like, oh my gosh. I had high hopes for this place. And we sat down and it's like, oh my gosh, this looks really nice. I like the atmosphere of what it looks like in here. And next, I went,
yeah,
that was it. So
normally we love every place we go, but no, I will not be going back there. No
SBS this week, unfortunately, but I do recommend for anyone that lives in San Diego County or Temecula, Southern, I can't even speak right now, Southern California. If you're in the area, Escondido has Ventana. That is a really cool place. They're also partnered with the Cohen restaurant group, which is not small business, but it is a very nice restaurant, which I took Angie to as a surprise birthday date. Mm-hmm. And we had excellent service from our waiter, Joseph. So Joseph, if you're watching this or listening to this, shoot us a message. Thank you so much for your service that night. Memorable experience. But
yeah, that was like the best customer service I've had in a while. He was amazing. He was patient. We sent food back. He wasn't even mad at it. Like he totally understood why we were sending it back because it came out a little cold. It was like a new dish and it just didn't quite pan out. Mm-hmm. But they brought us a second one and it was perfect.
Yes.
They had a really good attitude. They were checking on us constantly. He brought me wines to taste because I'm so indecisive. I couldn't decide what I wanted. They brought me a birthday dessert, which was really sweet. So yeah, it was great all around.
It was a great evening, so for sure. Ventanas in Escondido, and it's on top of the Lexus Escondido dealership.
Yeah, which the view is a little weird, but it's also really nice.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful view.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Get to watch sunset. So make sure to tune in every Monday for your next dose of Where in the World is Crime in San Diego? Till then, catch us on the next case.
And in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Oh, don't forget to tune in for our What in the World Wednesday. Set your alarms.
Tell me where in the world is
Crime in San Diego.